Warm welcome to everyone joining us for Spaceflight Now's coverage of the Starlink 10-28 mission. You are looking live at a Falcon 9 rocket standing on Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX is counting down to the launch of 28 Starlink satellites. Right now, liftoff is scheduled for 4:21 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 8:21 UTC for our viewers around the world. I'm Stephen Young, and I'll be providing commentary tonight. Will Robinson Smith is on assignment in Houston. We're broadcasting tonight from Spaceflight Now's News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Adam Bernstein is running our cameras this morning, assisted by John Pisani, who is running the technical aspects of the broadcast. We'll have support with tracking this launch from our friends Pete Costens at MaxQ Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs of C&J Images. Will is on assignment in Houston. Be sure to follow Will and the rest of the Spaceflight Now team on social media so you can keep up with their launch photography and reporting. Spaceflight Now is powered by our viewers and members. Please hit the like button, click subscribe, and the notifications bell so you will know when new videos are posted and you won't miss any of our live streams. Also, please share this stream. It helps more people find this live coverage and everything else going on in our channel. If you'd like to do more to help improve and expand our coverage of the space program, we would very much appreciate it if you would consider making a donation through YouTube's Super Chat feature or by becoming a member of our YouTube channel. Membership grants you access to our special members-only videos as well as discounts on our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. A huge thank you to everyone who's helped fund our coverage. We can't do this without you. We're now less than 55 minutes from the planned T0 for this Falcon 9 rocket, which is carrying 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites of the optimized variety. We're also a little over 15 minutes from, or a little less than 15 minutes from the point at which the Launch Director will give the go for the start of propellant load for today's launch. SpaceX is running the countdown from its Launch Control Center, which is housed inside the Hangar X facility, which is located about 5.5 miles to the west of the launch pad. The Falcon boosters are also refurbished and prepared for flight in that same building. Today's launch will be supported by teams at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Once again, liftoff tonight is targeted for 4:21 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Tonight's or this morning's launch window runs until about 5:47 a.m. Eastern. And if needed, SpaceX has another launch window tomorrow that opens at 1:26 a.m. Eastern. It's looking like a great morning to go fly a rocket at Cape Canaveral. Yesterday, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 95% chance of favorable conditions for launch. If SpaceX does need to take advantage of its backup launch opportunity tomorrow for whatever reason, the weather chances will dip to 90% favorable. Still a great chance for a successful liftoff. Tomorrow, the risk of cumulus cloud rules being violated is just slightly higher. Now, with less than 50 minutes left on the clock, let's take a look at the countdown timeline for today's Starlink mission. Around the T-minus 38-minute mark, the launch director will report the results of the go, no-go poll. If a go is given, propellant load will start at T-minus 35 minutes. That process begins with the loading of kerosene on both the first and second stages and liquid oxygen for the first stage. With 30 minutes left on the clock, cryogenic helium load will get underway. That helium is pumped into carbon fiber pressure vessels located inside the rocket's liquid oxygen tanks. The helium plays an important role during launch, pressurizing the rocket's tanks as the propellants are consumed. This keeps the liquid oxygen and kerosene flowing to the Merlin engines. The helium load starts with the first stage and continues with the second stage 4 minutes later. Loading of kerosene aboard the second stage should wrap up at about the T-minus 23-minute mark, and loading of kerosene into the much larger first stage fuel tank will continue. The next major event is the start of the strung-back chill-down process. The strung-back is the large lattice structure that sits alongside the rocket at the launch pad. In addition to supporting the vehicle, it serves as a conduit for the propellant lines, air conditioning, and power for both the rocket's second stage and the payload fairing. We can see this chill down process in the form of the so-called big vent. A large cloud of vapor will be seen billowing from that strongback as the liquid oxygen lines are cooled before the next major milestone in the countdown. That comes at T-minus 16 minutes when it's the turn of liquid oxygen to start flowing through those strongback lines into the second stage. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin first stage engines will get underway. This involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. It will protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the engine startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strongback begin retracting from the Falcon 9 vehicle. It will retract to an angle of about 1.5 degrees, leaning back ever so slightly from the Falcon 9, where it will stay until liftoff. Then the strongback will throw back in a more rapid fashion to clear the way for the climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Then around 2 minutes before launch, liquid oxygen loading should be complete on the second stage. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants. In the final 60 seconds of the countdown, control will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. If everything is looking good, the SpaceX launch director will give their final go for liftoff about 45 seconds ahead of time. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. If all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will command hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. Once again, that's scheduled for 4:21 p.m. 4:21 a.m. Eastern Time this morning. Just about 44 minutes and 15 seconds from now. See a few people asking in the chat about Will's assignment that he's currently on. Will is in Houston. He'll be covering the Crew 11 pre-flight news conferences and conducting interviews with members of the crew. So look out for his coverage. He'll also be making a few other visits while he's in Houston. So look forward to seeing what he has to report, probably in the coming weeks. This morning's launch was originally scheduled for the opening of the launch window, which was at 1:48 a.m. SpaceX rarely gives us any insight into what might cause any delays to a mission, so we're not sure why this launch slipped to 4:21 a.m. this morning. It could be getting the recovery vessel into position or a technical problem at the launch pad with the Falcon 9 vehicle. Also, SpaceX likes to optimize the time of its Starlink delivery missions to ensure that the satellites are inserted into a position in the constellation that is optimum for them. So it could be that 4:21 a.m. was just the best time to launch this particular mission. But as far as we know, the launch remains scheduled for 4:21 a.m. this morning. This is the first Falcon 9 to fly since July 2nd, a little bit of a break in the missions, possibly to give the launch teams the July 4th holiday off. T-minus 39 minutes and counting. At this point, the launch director should have completed their go, no go poll. That poll is conducted electronically, not verbally, as many launch providers conduct their countdown polls. It's done by the click of a mouse, and if the entire launch team is go for launch and the weather officer and the range give their okay, we should be starting to see start. We should see the start of propellant load in just over 3 minutes. The Falcon 9 first stage booster for this mission has the tail number 1077. It will be making its 22nd flight. Let's take a look at the frequent flyer table that lists the boosters with the most missions. 1067 is top of the pack with 29 flights. It made that 29th mission last Wednesday morning. It's followed by 1063 on 26. 1071 also tying for that second position with 26 flights. Booster 1069 trailing just one flight behind. And then we have a number of boosters all tying for the fifth position, 1076, 1077, which is making tonight's mission, and we'll take that fifth position on our frequent flyer chart. And finally, also with 21 missions, booster 1078. T-minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, if everything is going smoothly, the start of propellant load should be underway. If that process has indeed started, ground computers will be managing that automated sequence to pump propellants aboard the Falcon 9 rocket. 3 of the 4 propellant tanks will be loaded at this point. Those are the kerosene tanks on the first and second stage, and the liquid oxygen tank on the first stage. The fuel is a highly refined rocket-grade kerosene known as Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1 for short. The oxidizer used by the Falcon 9's Merlin engines is a super-chilled liquid oxygen. By densifying that oxygen, SpaceX can pack in more propellants and gain more performance than is possible with the liquid oxygen used by most rockets. If we take a look at a close-up of the first stage, we're looking for the formation of a frost and vapor band around the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank. We might be starting to see that already. It's a little hard to tell sometimes at this stage because of the heat waves, as our cameras have to be positioned miles from the launch pad for safety reasons. But you could just make out the SpaceX logo on the oxygen tank there. And below the X in that logo is where the frost band forms. It does seem like we are seeing the start of those vapors. They are not the propellant itself, but the cold surface of the fuselage of the Falcon 9 tank condenses the moisture in the humid Florida air and creates this vapor, which is now clearly visible. So we do have visual confirmation that the start of propellant load for this Falcon 9 launch at 4:21 is underway. SpaceX is now locked into that time. Once fueling begins, because of the densified, super chilled nature of this propellant, it's not possible to recycle and reload the tank and still meet the end of the launch window. So it's 4:21 or bust for this particular mission today. And the fueling process will continue down to the final minutes of the countdown when the tanks will be full and pressurized for flight. T minus 30 minutes and counting. At this point, helium load will get underway into the pressure vessels on the first stage. The helium will be used to pressurize those propellant tanks during flight. As I mentioned earlier, this will be the 22nd flight of this particular booster. Let's take a look at the flight history for Booster 1077. It made its debut back in October 2022 with the launch of the Crew 5 mission to the International Space Station, carrying astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut aboard the Dragon capsule Endurance. The next launch for this particular booster came in January 2023 with the launch of a GPS satellite. That was followed a month later by launch number 3 on February 18th, when it launched the Inmarsat 6F2 communication satellite. Unfortunately, that satellite suffered a power problem as it was being raised into its operational orbit. It made its first Starlink delivery mission with the 5-10 mission on March 29th. It was back on space station duties on June 5th of 2023 when it launched a cargo Dragon spacecraft. It carried more than 7,000 pounds of supplies to the International Space Station and a pair of rollout solar arrays to supplement the orbiting outpost's power generation capabilities. Its sixth flight was the launch of the Galaxy 37 satellite, also known as Horizons 4. It was back on Starlink duty with 3 Starlink delivery missions, before once again returning to its space station duties for its 10th flight. It carried Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft on the NG-20 mission. Then it was back again on Starlink delivery duties with a run of 5 missions. That was followed by the Optics X mission, also referred to as TD7, on November 17th of 2024. And then we're back to Starlink again with 6-71, 12-18, 12-25. And we've moved into 2025 with these launches. And we're going to turn the page. And its most recent launch on the 3rd of June of this year was the Starlink 12-19 mission. T-minus 23 minutes and counting. Around this time, the conclusion of kerosene load on the second stage should be happening. If we take a look at our zoomed in view of the base of the Falcon 9, you can see that liquid oxygen loading on the second stage is continuing. That frost and vapor actually serves as a very good fuel gauge for us. We'll rise up the first stage of the Falcon 9 as that tank is filled with a super cold liquid oxygen. Once again, the vapor you're seeing is actually caused by the water in the air condensating and forming that cloud of vapor as it comes into contact with the very cold outer surface of the fuel tank. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button on this stream. It really helps us out. Also, a big welcome to Aussie Space Girl, one of our moderators, joining us from Australia. In addition to the loading of the propellants, cryogenic helium is also being loaded into the storage tanks on the second stage now. We're coming up on the so-called big vent, the start of the chill down of the propellant lines on the strongback. And there it is. We can see that cloud of vapor. That's the process that chills those lines that run from the storage tanks at the pad to the second stage liquid oxygen tank. They're chilling those down so that when they start the loading of propellant, the propellant lines are not shocked by that super cold liquid flowing. And also it prevents any bubbling and buildup of gas that might be created if that liquid oxygen comes into contact with warm metal inside those propellant lines. So this is a very important process underway now at the pad to ensure that loading of propellants onto the second stage can continue. Now less than 18 minutes to the launch of the Falcon 9. The chill down of the strongback continues at the launch pad. You can tell there's not a lot of wind at Cape Canaveral this morning, as that plume of vapor is not traveling very far. The big vent now wrapping up as we're about to see the start of propellant load on the second stage. T-minus 16 minutes and counting. That loading of liquid oxygen into the second stage propellant tank should be underway. With less than 13 minutes to go until the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's take a look at the vehicle. It stands 70 meters tall, that's about 229 feet, and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The bottom two-thirds of the rocket is the first stage. Today's first stage booster has flown 21 times before. It is designated tail number 1077 in the SpaceX fleet. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen to produce a total of 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to touch down on the drone ship. Moving up the rocket above the first stage is the interstage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In the inset images, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it falls through the atmosphere, tail first. At the top of the interstage are three mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high pressure helium is used to release those latches, and four pneumatic pushes ensure there is a clean separation. The second stage nozzle is safely housed inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. The upper stage is powered by a modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC. It's equipped with a large nozzle optimized for burns in the vacuum of space and produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust. It will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 28 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, kerosene and liquid oxygen, as the first stage. It will ignite a third time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites. That is a deorbit burn that is designed to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and thus eliminate the possibility of creating any space debris. At the very top of the rocket is the payload fairing containing the 28 Starlink satellites. The payload fairing, made in-house by SpaceX, is made of a carbon composite material and is 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage will land on the drone ship. They will gently splash down under parachutes and be recovered for refurbishment and reuse. And we're getting a little taster of our capabilities with our tracking gear. This coming to us from our friend Pete Costens with Max Q Productions. You're getting a view of the ringed planet Saturn. You can just make those rings, which are pretty much edge on currently, just make those out. Not sure I can see any of the atmospheric features on Saturn, but a very clear view of the rings there. The angle of the rings changes over time as Saturn orbits in relative to our viewing position here on Earth. And at this particular time, very much close to being edge on there. So yeah, you don't see that very distinctive disk, but more of a line through the middle of the planet. So that gives you a taste of the views that we will hopefully get once the Falcon 9 lifts off shortly. As the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway, let's take a look at the trajectory for this morning's mission. The Falcon 9 will lift off from the pad at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It is flying in a northeasterly trajectory, targeting an orbit inclined at 53 degrees to the equator. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is a shortfall of gravitas. The drone ship is stationed about 400 miles downrange, pretty much due east of Savannah, Georgia. Meanwhile, the upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The 2 halves of the payload fairing will peel away from the upper stage and descend to a splashdown in the Atlantic, a bit further downrange from the booster landing zone. SpaceX will use one of its East Coast recovery ships to scoop up those fairing halves. The company saves about $7 million every time it reuses those fairings. We're getting close to the start of SpaceX's live coverage for this particular mission, so we should be getting some views from the pad as well as countdown audio. Currently, we're just hearing the Florida wildlife. Sadly for Adam, who is out in the field manning our cameras, sounds like a lot of mosquitoes in the air tonight.
Pressurizing for strong back retract.
And we just heard the call that the propellant tanks are being pressurized ahead of the retraction of the clamp arms, which have supported the vehicle up until this point, giving it a little extra support in case of high winds, not particularly a problem tonight. You can also hear some of the venting that occurs at the pad now that the SpaceX pad microphones Now that the SpaceX pad microphones are active, we just got confirmation there that the strong back retract sequence is underway. By pressurizing the propellant tanks, it makes the vehicle a little more rigid after it loses the support from those clamp arms. A little hard to see, but I do believe they are opening. A lot of vapor surrounding the vehicle as that second stage liquid oxygen load continues. So we see the vents as part of that process. T-minus 3 minutes. You'll notice there's a difference between our countdown clock and the one on the SpaceX feed. The SpaceX feed comes with a little bit of delay.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
There we have confirmation that loading of liquid oxygen on the second stage is complete. It's fully loaded with kerosene. That should have wrapped up about 4 minutes ago. Now less than 2 minutes to launch.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with its propellants, over 1 million pounds of propellants that will feed the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage and the single Merlin engine on the second stage. We're coming up on the 1 minute mark where the Falcon 9's onboard computers will take control of the countdown.
Gas launch closeouts.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And there we have the call that the Falcon 9 has control of the countdown, standing by for the launch director's final go for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
And there we have it. The Falcon 9 is poised for liftoff. 20 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 carrying another batch of Starlink satellites. And the Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Great views of this Falcon 9 launch coming in from our team. The Falcon 9 is traveling faster than the speed of sound and will be experiencing maximum dynamic pressure. There's about a minute left in the burn of the first stage. Those Merlin engines are producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Confirmation from SpaceX that the vehicle has reached maximum dynamic pressure.
MVAC chill has started.
Falcon 9 now over 23 kilometers in altitude.
Vehicle is following a nominal trajectory.
Chill down of the Merlin engine is underway, and we're coming up on main engine cutoff and stage separation. And there we see that separation and ignition on the second stage.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
And there we're seeing that stage
startup.
separation in the delayed view from SpaceX. An action replay for us of that engine ignition on the second stage. In the top right-hand box, we're seeing views from the first stage, which is being buffeted by the exhaust of the second stage, which is climbing away. You can just make out the lights of Florida in the background.
Confirmed.
And there we have separation of the fairing and our first view of those Starlink satellites. 28 of them, flat packed, one on top of another. We are 4 minutes into flight now. The Falcon 9 continuing to climb the first stage booster at an altitude of about 414 kilometers. Now, 114 kilometers, and the upper stage traveling at over 9,700 kilometers an hour at an altitude of 134 kilometers. The first stage is arcing up before it starts to fall back to Earth. We may be starting to see it
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Reaching its high point of 116 kilometers. Speed starting to pick up as it falls back to Earth. Still got views of the second stage in our tracking camera. That's coming to us from Pete Costins. The next major event will be the entry burn on the first stage. That burn coming up in about just about 40 seconds from now. Actually, in real time, that burn coming up in just a few seconds. We'll see if our tracking cameras can catch a view of that.
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
We did not see it in real time. Probably some clouds in the way, but we're now getting views of that burn. 3 engines firing on the first stage to slow down the entry into the atmosphere,
Stage
prevent
1,
that.
entry burn shut down.
And the call for conclusion of that burn. That burn is critical for the survival.
Continue to follow nominal trajectories.
That burn is critical for the survival of the Falcon 9 as it plunges back to Earth. Otherwise, it would overheat as it came into contact with increasingly denser layers of the atmosphere. So that burn has slowed its descent, and the grid fins will start to play a more important role in steering the rocket towards the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
Stage 1, transonic.
That first stage now traveling less than the speed of sound. We're coming up on the landing burn in about 10 seconds from now.
Stage 1, landing burn.
Now we have ignition of the single engine. Let's watch the landing.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 1, landing like deploy. Stage 1, landing confirmed.
And there we have it, touchdown of booster 1077, completing its 22nd trip to space. That second stage engine continuing to burn.
MVAC shut down.
Nominal park orbit.
And there we have confirmation that the Falcon 9 second stage has reached the parking orbit. SpaceX has concluded its coverage of this particular launch. The Falcon upper stage is coasting. It will remain in this coast phase for about 56 minutes. And then that second stage Merlin vacuum engine will make a very brief 1-second burn to circularize the orbit. That will be followed about 1 minute and 1 hour and 4 minutes into flight by the deployment of the 28 Starlink satellites aboard this Falcon 9. It's not until then that SpaceX can really call this a success. We'll be sure to keep you informed on social media when we get confirmation that deployment has occurred. So before we close our coverage tonight, let's take a look at the stats for this particular mission. This was the 22nd flight of booster 1077, the 501st Falcon 9 launch to date. It was the 84th Falcon 9 flight of this year, the 439th Falcon booster reflight, and the 150th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days. We find this is a useful way of tracking SpaceX's launch cadence. The company is hoping for around 170 launches this calendar year, and it's gradually increasing that count of launches in the last 365 days as it marches towards that target. This was also the 264th SpaceX launch from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral, and the 319th launch from that pad overall. Let's take a look at the bar chart, which shows the number of Falcon family launches by year. This is already the third most launches in a calendar year, with still most of the a good chunk of the year left to go. The recovery stats for this flight: it was the 117th landing on the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, the 383rd SpaceX drone ship landing, and the 472nd overall SpaceX booster landing. And our space industry stats for the year: the 59th orbital launch from Florida, the 89th orbital launch from US soil, the 99th orbital launch from a US rocket company. That includes the flights of Rocket Lab's Electron rocket from New Zealand. Rocket Lab, technically a US company. It was the 149th orbital launch attempt globally. And there have been 3 orbital launch failures this year. So with that, we're going to wrap up our coverage of the Starlink 10-28 mission. I want to give a big thank you to Adam Bernstein for setting up the cameras at the press site this morning, John Pisani for running the technical operations, Chuck Bridge of, it's a little early in the morning, Chuck Briggs for his tracking camera support, and Pete Carsons of MaxQ Productions for also tracking this morning's launch. So finally, a big thank you to you for supporting our coverage by watching the stream. We look forward to seeing you for the next launch from Cape Canaveral, which we believe is coming up this weekend, a mysterious launch known only as GTO-1. So stay tuned for that. Perhaps we'll get some more details about it, but at the moment, it's a very obscure and mysterious flight that SpaceX is planning for an unknown customer. So on behalf of everyone at Spaceflight Now, I wish you a very good morning, and we'll see you for the next one.